Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Tomorrow is going to be a very big day for the Parliament of South Africa because we are going to see the swearing in of the 58 members of the MK party. But not only are we going to see the swearing in of these 58 members, the MK party at the very last minute came in and announced a surprise announcement that Mandla Kayise John Hlophe is going to be the leader of the MK party in parliament. And this was a controversial announcement because they had to make some moves in order to make it possible for him to be eligible. Because when you give your list to parliament, right, you give your list to the IEC, that list is the list of people who are going to go in based on how many seats you get. And then you have reserves, right, on that list. And you have to go through your reserves and appoint from your reserves before you can appoint anybody outside of the reserves. And once the list is gazetted by the Chief Justice, it's locked for a year. So you can't just change. So the MK had to make some maneuvers in order to be able to get Mandla Kayise John Hlophe onto that particular list. So how did they make those maneuvers? What they actually had happen was that about 100 people said they were no longer available and or interested. These are the 100 people who were on the list. And in so doing, then they were able to amend that list or give a list of new names, right? Removing those particular people. So 21 names have been sent to the parliamentary secretary. Those 21 names include Mandla Kayise John Hlophe. He's going to go in as a member of parliament, as the leader of the MK party. And if the coalition holds, because we don't know whether the coalition is going to hold all the way, but I think it will hold. We'll see when the cabinet gets announced what the shape of that coalition is going to be in terms of the cabinet. But as things stand, MK is going to become the official opposition. So Mandla Kayise John Hlophe is going to become the leader of opposition in parliament. So that has been controversial. Let's go back and examine who is Mandla Kayise John Hlophe. So he's 63, I think, this year. He is, as you know, the former judge president of the Western Cape Division of the High Court, and he was appointed in the year 2000. So for 24 years, he held that position. His qualifications are that he got a B Juris from the University of Fort Hare. He went on to get an LLB from the University of Natal, Pietermaritzburg. Then he went on to do his LLM at the University of Cambridge. Right, so we're not talking about somebody who doesn't have pedigree here. Then he got his PhD from the University of Cambridge. So he's a Cambridge University educated legal scholar. Then he went on to be an academic where he was the professor and head of the Department of Constitutional and Public International Law, right, at the University of Transkei, which is now called Walter Sisulu University. Before that, he was a lecturer in industrial relations at Damlin Management School. He was also a part-time lecturer in Transkei. Then he was a vice dean of the law faculty for 2 terms. He was a chief editor of the Transkei Law Journal at the University of Transkei. He was also a lecturer at the University of Pietermaritzburg. He was a Roman law tutor at the University of Cambridge. He was a senior lecturer at the University of Zululand, and he was a fellow at the Legal Resources Center in Durban in the 80s. So you can tell that this is a person who has had extensive academic experience. In addition, he's also been a judge of the Western Cape Division of the High Court from 1995. He was an acting deputy judge president, right, in 1998. And he was a member of the Industrial Court of South Africa and Transkei. So if you think about all of those things, you can see that, yeah, this is a person who accomplished a lot. Outside of his legal positions, he had these other positions. He was a member of the South African Law Commission. He was the Chancellor of the Peninsula Technikon, or Western Cape Province, in 2003. He represented South Africa at the Hague Conference on Private International Law. He was an honorary professor, and he may still be, I don't know how these things work, honorary professor in the Faculty of Law at the University of Cape Town, and an honorary professor at UNISA. So John Hlophe has done a lot in the legal profession, but there are criticisms of him as well. So, he's somebody who's been in the news a lot of times with multiple criticisms that are levied against him. So it's fair and balanced for me to mention those criticisms, right? Here's what they are. On his appointment as judge president, he was appointed as a non-director of the Oasis Crescent Retirement Fund, where he received 500,000 rands in consultancy fees, which he did not declare initially to SARS or to the Justice Minister, right? In 2004, the Supreme Court of Appeal overturned his judgment in favor of the then Minister of Health after finding that Hlophe had denied pharmaceutical companies the right to a fair hearing by unreasonably delaying his decision on their appeal application. In 2005, Hlophe handed the then Justice Minister a report on alleged racism in the Cape provincial decision. This document set out a range of allegations against colleagues. He also accused the late former Chief Justice Pius Langa of following a political agenda, and former Chief Justice Mkhonto of being an Islamophobe and a liar. So that 2005 issue is where the race dynamics started emerging in his, legal career, or if you were to call, in his legacy. In 2007, Hlophe asked government to buy him a Porsche in keeping with his status, and there was an issue with that in some circles because judges in South Africa drive Mercedes-Benz cars, and a Porsche would have been more expensive. In 2008, the judges of the Constitutional Court filed a complaint of judicial misconduct against Hlophe on the grounds that he had sought to influence the outcome of a matter relating to then Deputy President Jacob Zuma's corruption charges. This was the thing. This 2008 thing, this Zuma move, this is what made him really become, legal enemy number one in the legal circles that were anti-Zuma. Right. In April 2021, the Judicial Conduct Tribunal found Hlophe guilty of gross misconduct, and this decision was then confirmed by the Judicial Service Commission, which recommended that Parliament impeach and ultimately remove him from the bench as per Section 177 of the Constitution. In March of 2024, he was then impeached by Parliament, becoming the first judge to be impeached, right? So this is his history. What does he bring to the parliamentary benches? What does he bring to the parliamentary benches? Number one, he obviously knows a lot about the legal system, lawmaking, the law itself. His jurisprudential thinking is that of a sophisticated academic. I think there are very few people who can go toe-to-toe with John Hlophe on legal scholarship in Africa. It's not a joke to have a PhD from Cambridge. So I'm not going to address right now the impeachment question that's coming. I'm addressing right now what he brings in terms of as a talent. If you're recruiting him to the team, what does he bring to the team? He brings a wealth of experience from an academic perspective as well as from a practitioner perspective, because he has been on the scholastic benches as well as the judicial benches for a long period of time. So what he will then be able to do is be a university to the other MPs, the other 57 MPs of the MK party, especially those who don't have a lot of experience in parliament, with law, with constitutionalism, with parliamentary procedure. He has, with that level of education, knowledge, and having sat on matters which deal with parliamentary issues, he will be able to provide that scholastic contribution to the MK benches. That's number one. Number two, he does come with a lot of management experience. He managed the Western Cape court for a very long period of time. That's a very complex process, and one that is not something to scoff at. And it was, by and large, considered to be an efficient court under his management, the Western Cape. So we can't say that he doesn't have management experience. He does. He knows how to run an office, how to deal with a lot of the logistics. People coming in the MK who don't have this experience are going to need that kind of tutelage, and he will be able to provide it. Whether you like him or don't like him, whether you are concerned about his support for Zuma and the grounds upon which he was impeached, those are talents and skills that he has, and you can't deny them, right? The other thing is that he actually is a good orator. He can make a good, solid presentation, and as leader of opposition, if the coalition holds, he will have to make those kind of speeches. He will have to articulate the vision, the criticisms, the vision of the party, his party, MK party, that he's leader of in parliament. He will have to criticize the governing coalition. He will have to also differentiate himself from other parties in parliament. He will need to be able to do that. And I think with that kind of public oratory that he has a grasp of, scholastic oratory, sometimes when people are listening to speakers, they think that a good public speaker is just Barack Obama. No, there are many different ways to be a good speaker. He is one of those good speakers. I think he is capable to do the job, right? So that's what he brings. It's going to be important for the MK party to be able to navigate those benefits and then the challenges of him being there. There's going to be a lot of criticism from publications like Daily Maverick, News 24. There's going to be criticism around the principle of somebody who was impeached being actually able to be in parliament as a public representative. I think it's important to note that impeachment is partly a political decision in and of itself. If the ANC decides to impeach you at the time when they had that kind of a majority with the DA, you're out. It may not even be an issue of principle. So the impeachment was political in as much as there was a finding against him for speaking to other judges about the Zuma matter. I want to say, it seems to me that judges speak to each other. And sometimes they do funny things that are not always examined with the level of scrutiny that they need to be. I remember that current Chief Justice Raymond Zondo said that he went to meet Zuma in a hotel. When he was asked at the JSC what he spoke about, he said he didn't remember. He didn't remember the details of some of that conversation. And at some point, he was even denying that he knew Zuma well enough for there to be criticism of their relationship. Why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing it up because Hlophe made these remarks about Jacob Zuma, and I don't think that it was appropriate for him to make those remarks, to try to lobby judges. That is not what you're supposed to do. However, I don't think that he's the only judge who has done these types of things. I think that his political mistake was that he was within the Jacob Zuma circle of influence, or he was viewed to be a Zuma man. And that in and of itself in the South African political spectrum leads to you being marginalized, ostracized, subject of attack, right? Whether it's right or wrong, it is the way things work. There is a grouping of political thinkers, academics, media houses that are within the Ramaphosa camp. And for the last 10, 12 years, those media publications were very hostile to Jacob Zuma, and they remain so. Even though now we have a body of knowledge that can show us how President Ramaphosa has also performed, those media houses have not always been willing to criticize President Ramaphosa in the same way that they were willing to criticize Jacob Zuma. Let me give you an example. We were told that South African Airlines was being captured by the Guptas, by Dudu Myeni, etc., right? When Pravin Gordhan became the Minister of Public Enterprises, he then participated in a very sketchy deal trying to sell SAA to Takatso Consortium, which didn't have the money to put up. A lot of money was poured into that particular process, And at the end of it, the process did not meet constitutional scrutiny. Not only that, Pravin Gordhan was, failing in many respects. He appointed a CEO to ESCOM who didn't do the job, and who actually said that the people in ESCOM were compromised or corrupt, etc., etc. So that's something that we must reflect on. But for his attempted sale of Transnet of SAA, Pravin Gordhan did not receive the same level of scrutiny that the previous administration had around the same company, around the same accusation of capture. That sometimes shows that, these things are not, they're not 100%. But anyway, those criticisms will remain. I wanna talk about a second thing which relates to the MK party. The question that I think needs to be considered by the MK party is, what do they have to do to be taken seriously? Because they've done this whole election denialism thing, and I still maintain up till now, I have not seen sufficient evidence to agree with the overall accusation that the election was not free and fair. I've not seen material evidence to that effect. And until I see any material evidence, my position is that the election was free and fair. My position is also that the MK should actually have governed KwaZulu-Natal because they had the largest mandate on the plurality. They won the plurality. But the election denialism, I don't think is something that makes sense to me, and it's something that I can't co-sign, right? Just to be fair. I know there are MK people who will be in the comments saying, no, the election was stolen, the election was rigged. I have not seen material evidence to that effect. My brothers, my sisters, I cannot use the platform that I have to endorse something that I have not seen material evidence to corroborate. What does the MK party need to do to be taken seriously? Number one, they need to clearly identify their target market. Number two, they need to clearly identify their ideological framework going forward. Number three, they need to set up a serious shadow cabinet. Number four, and the shadow cabinet needs to be following on the different things that different ministers are doing and actually trying to challenge, to contradict, to point out shortcomings. They have to be able to do that. Number four, they have to attend, not just main parliamentary sittings. They have to sit in committees. They have to do that kind of work. You can't have some people showing up to some of the stuff and not some of the stuff. That kind of stuff makes a party not look serious. Number five, they have to contribute in those particular committees. They have to contribute and make sure that they're participating fully. Number five, they have to avoid all of these problematic perceptions that exist about them. Perceptions that they are an ethno-nationalist party. So they have to try to diversify their membership, in other provinces. So if it's just KZN, Mpumalanga, Gauteng, in areas which are predominantly or have large Zulu populations, that's going to open them up to that criticism further. So they have to really diversify and show that they are growing in other spaces. They have to identify candidates for the local government elections which are coming up. Local government elections are very difficult to win because you have to have a strong candidate and the brand. The brand is not enough. It's one of the reasons why the EFF has struggled to win local government. So if they want to really be taken seriously, they have to show strong numbers in local government. They lost some by-elections last week where there was an anticipation that they would do well, but they didn't do well. So there's going to be some criticism in terms of can they sustain the momentum? So it's going to be important for them to set up their candidate shops, set up their branches in a way that allows them to identify talent and make sure that the talent is good. Then they have to also avoid this perception of being seen as anti-constitution or constitution attackers, because some of their rhetoric around the constitution makes it seem as if they are constitutional abolitionists and that they are opposed to the democratic framework altogether. That's something that they have to really work on if they're going to be taken seriously as a political party. Lastly, they have to avoid being seen as unserious about policy. There have been some interviews with MK leaders and prominent figures where it seemed as if they were being flippant or blasé about, or nonchalant, if you will, about serious policy issues. When they were being asked some fundamental questions, they didn't always seem to have a grasp of everything that they need to. So in order to avoid that, they need to start making sure that they speak with competence, coherence, and confidence on policy. You get that? Competence, coherence, and confidence on policy. Various policy. They have to show an understanding of parliamentary procedure, an understanding of all of the work of parliament, an understanding of their role as legislators in the legislature, and how to actually effectively be an opposition. I think they'll be able to do some of these things if they take it seriously. The party cannot be seen as just a Jacob Zuma revenge project. The party can also not be seen as a family project. If it becomes seen as those two types of things, the longevity will not be there post Jacob Zuma. And the reality also is that Jacob Zuma is an elderly man. He's 82. So I hope that he has a long life, that he reaches 100. But at some point, the party has to move on from him, and it has to start preparing for that kind of an eventuality. Look, I think that they're aware of a lot of these things and that they'll be able to address a lot of these things. But these things are going to be a challenge. As things stand right now, they are going into a parliamentary system where the media is very skeptical of them. The media will be attacking them, where they're going against this large governing coalition with a variety of voices, which will be trying to belittle them as the opposition party. They are going into a weakened progressive caucus because some of the people left the progressive caucus and joined the governing coalition. So as parliament will be standing, there are going to be three groups. There's going to be the governing coalition, there's going to be this progressive caucus, and there's going to be the moderates. And all of these groups are going to be competing for, the future of South Africa and competing for vote share in the next election. So 2029 is going to be a very pivotal election. But before 2029 comes 2026. And that's really where we're going to see where things are lying. But that's where things stand right now with the MK party. Hlophe is going in. It's a bold move. It's a controversial move by the MK party. But also, I just want to say this just as a concluding thing. He is not breaking any laws by being there. There are moral questions about should an impeached person, judge, for example, be able to become a member of parliament. But as things stand right now, he's not breaking any law. It's perfectly legal for him to do this. It's within the law. They found a way to get him onto that list. But I also think there is value to having somebody who is adversarial to the incumbents, because that person will be able to really push and hold those incumbents to accountability. If you think about Glenys Breitenbach, who used to work, I think, at the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority, and then she got summarily dismissed in a way that was irregular. She has been very aggressive in the committees and very aggressive and helped the DA to be able to hold those particular institutions to account. And I think that's valuable. So we've seen weSizwe Mkhonto come in from a controversial dismissal. We're now seeing John Hlophe come in from also a controversial dismissal or impeachment, if you will, both of them. Now, the question then becomes, what are they going to contribute? We'll see. But obviously, the story that is still hovering over everything is the coalition story. We still don't know whether the cabinet will come this week and in what shape or form it will come. We saw that there was supposed to be an announcement in Gauteng of the MECs. Panyaza announced that he was going to announce, and then an hour later they suspended the announcement. What that says is that things are all over the place with these coalition negotiations. DA is still pushing hard for their 10 cabinet positions, and John as the vice president. We're going to see where that lands. Zizi Goto is also making a comeback to parliament tomorrow. So that's also going to be interesting. And it's going to be interesting because, this man is charged. He's out on bail. And of course, you can go back to parliament. He's on the list. But then the question then becomes, step aside rule. What has happened to step aside rule now? Is this a precursor now so that if someone else gets charged later, they can continue? Maybe they're letting Zizi go on because they know that there could be a charge somewhere or someone who's high profile. Do you think they should enforce step aside rule for Zizi Wotwa? Let's have a conversation. Thank you so much to everyone who subscribed. I really appreciate you. If you haven't subscribed, about 86% of the people watching haven't subscribed. Make sure you click that subscribe button. Let's meet in the comments. I'm really interested to hear what you say, whether you agree, whether you disagree. I'm really interested in what you have to say. I've seen so many interesting comments in the comment section. I really appreciate them. Thank you, everyone who watched till the very end. Till the next one.